Next, we will discuss other issues that may arise during the sampling process and compromise the validity of a statistical study. To minimize the sampling biases, most large-scale surveys combine more than one random sampling techniques. Such multi-stage sampling is used frequently by pollsters and government agencies. For instance, the United States National Center for Health Statistics conducts surveys to obtain information on a variety of health issues. Data collection is done by a multi-stage probability sampling of approximately 42,000 households. There are many other possible issues that may compromise the validity of a statistical study besides sampling biases. Here is by no means a complete list of terms that one should be familiar with when analyzing a statistical study. Some of the terms are examples of a specific bias, and some are examples of unethical practices that lead to some type of bias. A push poll is an interactive marketing technique most commonly employed during political campaigning, in which an individual or organization attempts to manipulate or alter prospective voters' views under the guise of conducting an opinion poll. Large numbers of voters are contacted with little effort made to actually collect and analyze voters' response data. Instead, the push poll is a form of telemarketing-based propaganda and rumor spreading, disguised as an opinion poll. Push polls may rely on insinuations or information gathered from opposition research serving the political opponents. A loaded question, like a loaded gun, is a dangerous thing. A loaded question is a question with a false or questionable presumption, and it is loaded with that presumption. This type of fallacious question puts the person who is being questioned in a disadvantageous and defensive position, since the assumption in the question could reflect badly on them, or pressure them to answer in a way that they wouldn't otherwise. One especially loaded question was asked by Brian Williams during the 2011 Republican presidential candidate debate at the Reagan Library. Directed to Texas Senator Rick Perry, Williams asked, "Have you struggled to sleep at night with the idea that any one of those 234 Texas executed inmates might have been innocent?" This loaded question threw Perry for a loop because it actually entails a number of different assumptions, including the moral validity of execution and Perry's own involvement with this part of the judiciary process. Here is a more recent example of a loaded question. A White House correspondent on Thursday, August 13, 2020, said he's been waiting 5 years to ask the United States President Donald Trump a question, and he finally got his chance. But the blunt question was not met with an answer, as this is usually the best strategy in response to loaded questions such as this. The order that questions are asked in a survey or a study can influence the answers that are given. That's because the human brain has a tendency to organize information into patterns. The earlier questions, in particular the ones that come just before, may provide information that subjects use as context in formulating their subsequent answers, or affect their thoughts, feelings, and attitudes. Pew Research gave this example from a December 2008 poll. When people were asked, all in all, are you satisfied or dissatisfied with the way things are going in this country today? Immediately after having been asked, do you approve or disapprove of the way George W. Bush is handling his job as president, 88% said they were dissatisfied, compared with only 78% without the context of the prior question. In social science research, social desirability bias is a type of response bias that describes the tendency of survey respondents to answer questions in a manner that will be viewed favorably by others. It can take the form of over-reporting good behavior or under-reporting bad or undesirable behavior. The tendency poses a serious problem with conducting research with self-reports. This bias interferes with the interpretation of average tendencies as well as individual differences. When confronted with the question, do you use drugs or illicit substances, the respondent may be influenced by the fact that controlled substances, including the more commonly used marijuana, are generally illegal. Respondents may feel pressured to deny any drug use or rationalize it, such as, I only smoke marijuana when my friends are around. Publication bias is a type of bias that occurs in published academic research. It occurs when the outcome of an experiment or research study influences the decision whether to publish or otherwise distribute it. Publishing only results that show a significant finding disturbs the balance of findings and inserts bias in favor of positive results. Publication bias is sometimes called the file drawer effect or file drawer problem. This term suggests that results not supporting the hypothesis of researchers often go no further than the researchers' file drawers, leading to a bias in published research. Understanding the reasons why data are missing is important for handling the remaining data correctly. If values are missing completely at random, the data sample is likely still be representative of the population. But if values are missing systematically, analysis may be biased. For example, in a study of the relation between IQ and income, if participants with an above average IQ tend to skip the question, what is your salary? Analyses that do not take into account this may falsely fail to find a positive association between IQ and salary. Another type of a non-sampling bias occurs in a self-interest study, a study in which the researchers have an interest in the outcome of the study. Would you trust this 1930 Lucky Strike advertisement knowing that the medical study was sponsored by the tobacco company itself? Soon after e-cigarettes debuted in Europe in 2006, tobacco companies began investing heavily in vaping. Do you trust that vaping is harmless? I hope not. Another interesting phenomenon called the precise lies frequently occurs in the age of mass media. The famous statistic of women earning 77 cents for every dollar men earn is exactly this sort of lie. It makes no attempt to correct the differences in experience, education, or even full versus part-time status. Louis Jacobson of PolitiFact does a very nice job of walking a reader through different ways controls can be added that change that number, while also pointing out that it can be a true statement as long as it doesn't come with an implication this difference is due to discrimination against women working equivalent jobs. We discussed a variety of issues that may arise during the sampling process and compromise the validity of a statistical study. As a responsible citizen, it is your responsibility to be aware of these issues when conducting or analyzing a statistical study.